how am I going to access information? Do I have access to a really good library in my university? How am I going to actually cope with all of my studying? How am I going to get good grades? But today, the challenge is making sense of the abundance of information that is thrown at us through various, not just devices, but I think everywhere, right? I think social media, everything is throwing something at you or the other every minute, or actually every nanosecond. For the first time in our history, a learner can access explanations, simulations, translations, coding assistance, and personalized support almost instantly. So a student has access to all of this. This is an extraordinary achievement, and I think we should not underestimate it. We should actually celebrate it. Generative AI, for instance, has been adapted at speed, at a speed I think few technologies in history have matched, reaching hundreds of millions of users globally, locally, in just a few years. So this disruption is real. So AI is real, and it's here to stay. The question is not whether education will change. It will change, but how will it change? I think that's the bigger question we need to ask ourselves as educators, as education leaders who are participating in this World Education Congress. But it also presents a very, very powerful challenge. If information is available everywhere, and think about it slightly deeply, what is the purpose of education? And I think that's a question that we struggle with day after day. Because if the answer in our minds is simply delivering information, then AI will inevitably outperform many of us, many of our institutions, and many of the systems that we have carefully built. The future value of education cannot lie in just access to high-quality information. It must lie in something deeper. For centuries, I think intelligence was a scarce resource, like I said. And for the first time in human history, it's becoming increasingly accessible, and that too on demand, which raises a very, very important question for us in the room and those not in the room as well. If intelligence becomes easy to access, what capabilities become more valuable? And that's something that we should all think about. And I think the big capability that we should value, or we might want to value, basically, are three I'm sure there are many more, but I'm going to talk about three uniquely human advantages that not just our generation, but generations before us and after us will actually see a lot of value when you're building institutions, when you're delivering your classes, or whether you're building a startup or you're going on your next big, private equity journey, whatever may be your calling. I think three basic human advantages do exist, which we should all think very deeply about. So the first human advantage is judgment. And I think it's a very, very important human advantage. AI can generate answers, like we all know, but it cannot decide what matters. AI can definitely identify patterns, but it cannot determine the values. It can 100% optimize decisions, and I think we all use AI to be able to, quickly sense check, okay, can you analyze this? Can you tell me what to make of this? What are some of the decisions that, and now the prompts and commands are fantastic, but who is behind those commands? I think a really intelligent human brain is behind those commands. But it cannot accept responsibility for them. So if you look at the world, across the world, AI is increasingly influencing recruitment, especially in universities, recruitment even in jobs, assessment, healthcare, research, finance, and public sectors, and your sector too, like you very beautifully said, the AEC sector. But when difficult decisions arise, when we have a difficult decision to make, who do we turn to? AI or people? People, right? We look at teachers, we look at mentors, researchers, policymakers, leaders, and that's our first port of call when we come to making difficult decisions. Not because they have all the answers, but because they can exercise judgment, which AI is not able to do, yet at least. And judgment is definitely more than just knowledge. It is knowledge combined with that really potent mix of ethics that you spoke about earlier, context, wisdom, and accountability. So I think in many ways, the information is not our challenge. We don't really suffer from shortage of information. We suffer from a shortage of wisdom, which I think the sooner we acknowledge it, I think the better we might become at putting things together and using AI very mindfully and intentionally. In fact, I think the World Economic Forum, I was speaking at Hyderabad the other day and someone was telling me that the World Economic Forum estimates that nearly 40% of core workplace skills will change within the next few years. So if technical skills continue to evolve at that very fast pace, then the ability to exercise judgment, think critically, adapt and learn may become the most valuable skill of all. So let me ask you a question. And you don't need to answer it aloud, but if you do want to, please say. Just think about it. If every student who's studying in our education system had access to the world's knowledge, let's say, through AI, what exactly are universities assessing? Are we assessing knowledge? Yes, no? Are we assessing knowledge or the ability to use knowledge wisely? The ability to use knowledge wisely, right? So I suspect that I think the more we start thinking about what we are assessing, more than how to assess. I think how to assess is important, but I think if we get the words right, I think a lot of our work becomes simpler, easier, and also current and with the times. The second human advantage is connection. I think it's really an underrated a skill that as educators we talk about in our universities, because technology today can personalize learning at the press of a button or one command, and it can personalize learning for millions of students in seconds. But it really truly cannot care, right? So again, I think from my morning conversation, I think this came out really very well when I was speaking with someone. So AI cannot recognize human potential that we didn't know that we had. So you will remember, if you go back on your own educational journey, you really don't remember, oh, I learned quantum mechanics, or I learned this, or this was a great textbook, or that was a fantastic, presentation. But I think, who do we remember? We remember our teacher, a mentor, we remember a person always. So I think the human connection that we create in our educational institutions is way more important than the technology that we use to sort of enable learning or to enable spaces of good teaching and learning. I think teachers, mentors, and I know that there's going to be a panel discussing that as well. I think they're able to find a moment where even we didn't realize that we had the potential. I think good teachers, which is why AI cannot replace a great teacher. But AI can enable a good teacher to become great, for sure, absolutely. And this is perhaps the great paradox of the AI era. As technology becomes more and more powerful, human relationships start becoming more and more valuable. And I think the sooner we realize that, and I'm sure it's going to come up in all your discussions in the panels, the better we become as either creators of AI or users of AI or enablers of AI in our environments. And in an age where students can access knowledge from almost anywhere, right? Phone, everyone almost has everybody has a device, and they know how to use it much better than we do. So I think knowledge is literally at the fingertips of young people. So I think for us, our job becomes even more difficult to be able to deliver something unique to students, which they cannot find online or through an AI chatbot or tool. So the one thing I think that we can add value is the belonging, the connection. I think that's where we bring in a lot of value. Our institutions bring in a lot of value. Which leads me to another question, another quick question. If AI can deliver, like I said, personalized learning to millions of students or millions of people, young professionals at scale, what is the unique value of university campuses? How many university campuses, or how many people working in higher education in this audience? About 40 to 50%. Okay. Fabulous. Is it your building? No, right. Right. Fantastic. I think, obviously, you need a really great campus, the building, the infrastructure, which is very important. But I think the answer is really not buildings, not even technology, not even content. Sometimes content is important because everybody is looking to develop a good curriculum. But I think the big difference that university campuses can bring to student experience, to bring to student satisfaction, is community, collaboration. Also, I think in terms of, like you said, mentoring, guidance, a guide on the side. I remember my professor asking me way back, Janaka, do you want to be a sage on the stage? I feel like a sage on the stage now, but, or do you want to be a guide on the side? And I think our roles as teachers, as educationists, is drastically changed from us standing in front of a classroom, conducting a lecture, but I think it's more about facilitating and enabling learning in our classrooms. And if you're able to use AI to enable you to be able to do your job really very well, good for you. Also, I think it's development of character. It's so important that as institution builders, we also think about character, building ethics, building resilience in students, which is so important. And finally, the third human advantage is purpose. AI can tell us how to do things. You just punch in a really good command or prompt. AI can give you answers in seconds as to how to do stuff. But we are the ones to decide why. Why should we do this? What is the rationale of doing this? I think we hold the key to that rationale. And let's not let go of that rationale. And this matters, especially in a sector like education. It's so important to be able to get the why right? I don't know how many of you have read, I mean, he's one of my favorite authors, and he's a fantastic marketer. And he writes amazingly well. He writes books which are like only 20 or 30 pages, which is fantastic. Simon Sinek, however you want to pronounce him. He wrote The Purple Cow, I think. And he has something called the Golden Circle. At the center of it, most of us in our organization say, what should we do? How should we deliver it? But I think he asks, the first question is why, the inner circle, and then the how, and then the what. So I think it's really important that we get the why right, which only we can do as human beings and not leave it to AI. And of course, everybody talks about employability. It's so important. I mean, India is talking about it, the UK is talking about it. It's really important. But education is never solely only about employability. Of course, it's about skills, like you do in your university. Of course, it contributes to economic growth, but it's also about citizenship. It's also about creativity. It's also, like I said, about resilience, about empathy. Somebody mentioned empathy earlier, and it's about ethics. And our collective ability to be able to navigate increasingly complex societies, and that's what we're doing. At a moment of unprecedented uncertainty, the world looked to science for students, for solutions, right? I think, and we all know what we're talking about, but technology alone did not save lives. Trust mattered, collaboration mattered, purpose mattered. We're talking about the pandemic. I mean, most of us would have forgotten about the pandemic, but it's good for us to remind ourselves what happened during the pandemic. The partnership between the University of Oxford and AstraZeneca, combined with India's extraordinary capability to manufacture and deliver and distribute vaccines at scale, demonstrated what becomes possible when knowledge actually begins to serve humanity. We couldn't have done it only with technology. You needed all of these people. You needed these human beings to come together. You needed institutions to come together. And then we were able to deliver nothing short of a miracle, both in India and across the world, right? It was not simply a scientific achievement. It was a fantastic example of human achievement. A reminder that, and I think it's a good reminder for all of us to have, that some of our greatest challenges can only be solved when knowledge, innovation, and purpose, they all come together. You have to have that point of intersection. And the deeper question is this. I think the deeper question for 50% of the audience who's working in higher education is this: what kind of people do we hope our students will become? And I think if we are able to crack that, I think everything else, curriculum, industry partnerships, academia, linkages, all of that will sort itself out automatically. And I think that's the human question we need to ask ourselves, and it'll always be that one big central question that is so important for us. And this is where I believe that the UK-India relationship becomes particularly very, very important. It is no coincidence that education now sits as a distinct pillar within the India-UK Vision 2035. How many of us have heard of the India-UK? How many of us know that there's something called the India-UK Vision 2035? Fabulous, about 5 or 6 people. I mean, you can Google it, or you can ask AI. It'll tell you really very quickly what it is. It is a hallmark agreement signed by both prime ministers of our two countries, India and UK. For the first time in forever, education sits at the heart of the India-UK Vision 2035 document, which means that both countries realize education is actually a very powerful tool that can change the world. And we at the British Council are absolutely delighted because we are delivering on that Vision document 2035. Both countries realize also that skills, talent, research, knowledge exchange will shape future prosperity just as much as technology itself. Technology can't do it alone. You need all of this to back technology. And Vision 2035 is also a really important acknowledgement that the future will be built not only through innovation, but very importantly, through people like you and us. And not because one country has all the answers, and certainly not because innovation travels only in one direction. So it's absolutely reciprocal, mutual, and we are very, very, very proud that education is sitting at the heart of the Vision 2035. And the future will be shaped by countries and institutions that are willing to learn from each other. And I think that's a big shift that we've been experiencing over the last decade. What does India bring? I think you're all from India, so I think I am too, but I do work for the British Council. India brings extraordinary talent. India brings, unimaginable scale, entrepreneurial energy, digital innovation, the ability to translate ideas rapidly into impact. I think those are India's big, big strengths. The United Kingdom, on the other hand, brings globally recognized universities, research excellence, innovation ecosystems, and a long tradition of educational collaboration. And together, all of us have the ability to shape how AI and education can evolve together, not as separate, not separately in silos, but actually can evolve together, and not just within our own two countries, but globally as well. And something remarkable is happening as we speak. For decades, international education was delivered by the movement of students. Agree, disagree? Yes, no? Yes, right? Yeah. But now I think it's increasingly being defined by movement of ideas. It's not just students, but movements of ideas, of research, of innovation, of talent, of collaboration, of research partnerships, of shared ambition between universities in the UK and India. And we're witnessing absolutely new forms of partnership emerge across India. Transnational education. If I'm sure the people who work in higher education have heard TNE, the term TNE often spoken about, right? India's TNE numbers are not that great. Small countries like Sri Lanka do infinitely better than India on TNE, but I think now is our time to be able to shape that transnational education conversation. The people in the room, the people in your institutions have the ability and the power to shape something for the future, and how exciting is that? Lots of universities are looking at career-focused learning models, international branch campuses, and I know there's a mixed view on international branch campuses. I'm happy to talk during the break around that. But I think universities such as Southampton, you may already know, have opened their campuses in campus in Gurugram, others including, so you have a lot in Maharashtra, including Queen's University, Belfast, University of York, Aberdeen, and the University of Bristol, and the University of Liverpool. I come from the south, I'm from Chennai, so in the south, we have the University of Liverpool, which is going to open its campus in Bengaluru this coming academic year, the fall of this year. And universities are no longer looking at India as only a recruitment market for students. I think they're investing in India's potential, in India's ability for scale, in India's talent to set up not just international campuses, but also to look at building talent pipelines, looking at research collaboration, looking at these wonderful innovative models. For example, Imperial College London, which is ranked 1 or 2 in the world, is now set up a hub in Bangalore that's connecting Indian innovation with a global network of research collaboration and innovation, and that is very exciting. And then you have a different model, which is the University of East London, which is now setting up its first ever careers hub, a South Asia careers hub in Chennai, with a growing emphasis on employability, industry engagement, and future-ready skills. So I think it's no longer about, getting something from the UK and plugging it in India. It's about both countries learning from each other, being reciprocal towards each other, and building on their collective skills to be able to produce the next generation of future-ready learners. And taken together, if you take it in isolation, it may mean nothing. But if you take all of this together, all of these developments signal something bigger than just institutional expansion. They've shifted the conversation from just student mobility to knowledge mobility, which I think is really exciting. It's an exciting time for us to be in at this point. I'm also delighted that we have some colleagues, I think, from the UK higher education sector, including University of Birmingham, who's there here, and also are part of the wider conversation. So very, very happy that you're part of this conversation, and we can then work together to try and see not just how to improve bilateral relations between India and UK, but also how can India learn from the UK, and more importantly, how can the UK learn from such an exciting ecosystem in India. But also there's another reason why collaboration matters, responsibility. I think that's a huge, huge factor that sometimes we tend to ignore, but I think with all of this technological advance comes responsibility. Because AI does provide us with extraordinary, exciting opportunities, but it also poses a lot of challenges. Questions of ethics, which I think you're going to be discussing, trust, fairness, bias, inclusion, because the moment you introduce AI, you are leaving a whole section of people behind. So I think being gender bias, because it tends to leave a lot of women behind. So I think if you factor that into your conversations in your higher education institutions right at the start, it becomes an exciting conversation to have, but also an exciting path that you can chart for your higher education institutions. And we can't answer and solve most of these questions or challenges all by ourselves. I think AI will belong to those who adapt and adopt it mindfully and intentionally. And that's something that I completely believe in, especially for higher education institutions. Don't wait to add it on in the middle as a good to have, but think about it right at the start when you're looking at your curriculum, when you're having these industry relevant conversations, to be able to build it into your sort of DNA of your organization rather than having it right in the middle. I think AI will produce efficiency with equity, technology with humanity. I think that will be the biggest challenge we have, to be able to marry these two together. Throughout history, I just want to end with a few sort of closing remarks. Every technological revolution has led humanity back to one single same question: what makes us uniquely human? That question has not changed, right? We still ask ourselves every time a new AI tool, Sundar Pichai, comes on Instagram and releases the next big Google idea or an AI tool, or Apple comes up with like a fantastic innovation, or Microsoft does something. I think the one question that we all as educators ask ourselves is, what makes us uniquely human? What makes our students uniquely human? What can we do to make them uniquely human? I think that's a question that we repeatedly ask ourselves. And the question is not about whether AI will shape the future or not. It is going to shape the future. Let's accept that. The question is whether we will shape a future worthy of our humanity. That's something for us to think about. I think the institutions that will succeed and go on to become, that distinction from good to great happens when institutions start developing judgment in an age of answers, more connection in an age of automation, and also more purpose in an age of acceleration. So again, it's judgment, connection. My top three are judgment, connection, and purpose. And I think that's why it means more humanity, and which is why people like me, I'm a big optimist. I still remain very, very optimistic, because I feel that every great advancement in human history has ultimately depended not just on technology alone, but definitely on people. People like yourselves with imagination, people like yourselves. Somebody said you're courageous to even be here in this room despite the bad weather situation over the last 2 days. But I think people like you with imagination, with courage, people with values, I think that's really very important. And people willing together to work across boundaries, across continents, getting out of your comfort zone and across sectors and borders. And as India and the United Kingdom continue to deepen and strengthen our partnership in education, in research, in innovation, we have this absolutely amazing opportunity, perhaps even a huge responsibility, to help shape the future together. A future that is not just smarter, but a future that is wiser. Not just more efficient, but more inclusive. Not just only technological, which is important, but more human. Because, like I said, the future of education is not artificial, it is profoundly human. And if we all get it right, even in a small way, baby steps is fine, no pressure. If we get it right, I think it'll never be artificial, it will be real, it will be profoundly human. And thank you very much, and happy to sort of, engage over the break and have a little bit of more chat. I think some ideas of mine may be challenged. Looking forward to that as well. So thank you very much